I forgive him.
Her voice echoed through the memorial hall. Some called it grace, others called it strategy. But one thing was certain. The second Erika Kirk forgave the man accused of taking her husband's life, the internet exploded. People weren't just questioning her words, they were questioning her motives. Was this really the sound of a grieving widow, or the calm calculation of someone who knew more than she was letting on? And that was only the beginning. Because while Erika's speech fueled suspicion, another voice stepped into the storm and flipped the entire narrative upside down. Candace Owens. To some, she was the only friend bold enough to speak the truth. To others, she crossed the line. But no matter which side you're on, there's no denying that what followed turned Charlie Kirk's death into one of the most chaotic, controversial stories in recent memory. It was supposed to be just another high-energy event. Thousands of students packed into a massive university tent, phones up, cameras flashing, voices echoing so loud you could barely hear yourself think. Charlie Kirk was in his element, smiling, shaking hands, firing up the crowd like he had countless times before. But in a matter of seconds, that energy flipped from celebration to chaos. At first, nobody realized what was happening. The music kept blaring, the chants kept rolling, and the confusion blended into the roar of the crowd. Then whispers started spreading. Security rushed forward. The cheers turned to screams. Students describe it as surreal. One moment they were chanting, the next they were running for the exits. Charlie Kirk's collapse didn't happen in a quiet home, hidden from the world. It happened in front of thousands of people, under blinding lights, and captured on dozens of phones. And yet, despite all those cameras, nobody could agree on what really happened. Because the more you look at the footage, the less it looks like a random tragedy, and the more it feels like something darker. The official version painted a simple picture. A 22-year-old named Tyler Robinson allegedly perched himself on a rooftop and fired the shot that ended Charlie's life. Police said it was quick, decisive, and carried out by a lone wolf acting on his own. Case closed. But from the very beginning, that story didn't sit right. Tyler Robinson wasn't some anonymous figure who stumbled into the event. He knew Charlie's exact speaking schedule. He knew which exit Charlie was supposed to walk through at the end. He even seemed familiar with the tent layout and the placement of security. That kind of detail isn't something you find out by scrolling Instagram. It sounded like insider knowledge. And then there was the way it all unfolded. Eyewitnesses described someone who didn't act like a nervous kid making an impulsive decision. There was no hesitation, no fumbling, no wasted movement. Every step looked planned. The shooter displayed precision and confidence, almost like he'd been trained or had rehearsed the act in his head 100 times before. But here's where it gets even stranger. Police admitted they didn't actually track Tyler down themselves. They didn't have forensic evidence that pointed directly to him. They didn't even have a smoking gun trail of receipts or messages. No, they only found Tyler because his own father turned him in. Without that, investigators admitted they might not have caught him at all. That detail sent conspiracy threads spiraling. If Tyler was really the mastermind, why did it take his own dad to connect the dots? Why didn't law enforcement have a stronger case? And if this was truly the act of one man with no support, why did it look so calculated, almost military-like? Even the weapon raised questions. Authorities claimed it was a .30-06, a hunting rifle powerful enough to drop an elk at 400 yards. But gun experts online slowed the footage down and said the sound didn't match. Instead of a thunderous blast, it had the hollow pop of a smaller caliber. Could police have gotten the weapon wrong? Or was that official detail part of the cover story? The official version looked neat on paper, too neat. And to a lot of people, it felt like a script written for headlines, not the messy, complicated truth that really went down that night. When tragedy strikes, suspicion almost always falls on the spouse. And for Erika Kirk, the microscope only grew stronger after her public appearance. People expected tears. They expected trembling hands and a voice cracking with grief. Instead, Erika walked onto that stage with poise. She was calm, collected, and almost clinical. To her supporters, it was the sign of a strong woman holding herself together for her children. To her critics, it was the sign of someone who knew more than she was willing to admit. The moment that defined everything came when Erika uttered the words, "I forgive him."
That young man. forgive him.
Forgiveness, a word that should have brought healing, instead brought outrage. Viewers across the internet replayed it again and again, not believing what they had just heard. How could she forgive the man accused of taking her husband's life, and forgive him so quickly? To some, it felt like a calculated move to appear saintly, to present herself as the grieving but graceful widow. To others, it felt like a distraction, a way to redirect people from asking harder questions about what she really knew. And the more people picked apart her speech, the stranger it seemed. Her words didn't sound spontaneous, they sounded prepared. She quoted scripture but misquoted simple verses, leaving churchgoers uneasy. She cracked small personal jokes, like mentioning Charlie's gray hairs in a moment when most expected raw heartbreak. And she spoke more about politics and Charlie's mission than about Charlie the man, the husband, the father.
You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry.
Neighbors chimed in too. Some said they'd heard shouting from the house in the past. Others claimed Erika wasn't as devoted behind closed doors as she appeared online. On social media, people began posting side-by-side comparisons of her body language before and after Charlie's death, zooming in on her smiles, her eye contact, even the way she held her tissue. It didn't take long for hashtags to explode. Hashtag Erika knows more. Hashtag scripted speech. Hashtag the widow theory. Instead of sympathy, Erika found herself the target of an internet trial, where every gesture became evidence and every word was treated like a confession. The widow had become the suspect.
But the speculation didn't stop with Erika. Candace Owens stepped into the storm, and when she did, the entire conversation shifted. She wasn't polished, she wasn't rehearsed, she was raw, emotional, and unfiltered. In one of her live streams, she made it clear she didn't want people remembering Charlie as a cartoon or a caricature. She wanted them to remember the man she knew.
Not wanting Charlie's caricature to survive when the actual Charlie Kirk individual, who Charlie Kirk actually is so much more important. The caricature, the cartoon, is that Charlie is this young, smart guy, made a career out of debating college kids.
That clip cut through the noise. It wasn't politics, it wasn't gossip, it was grief. And viewers who had spent hours pointing fingers suddenly stopped and admitted this sounded real. It was the kind of tribute they expected from his wife, but instead, it came from Candace. And yet, the more emotional she got, the more people listened when she raised suspicions. The internet began to believe she wasn't just grieving, she was uncovering a betrayal that others were too afraid to say out loud. Behind the public drama, the storm was tearing through Charlie's family. For years, he'd painted them as the picture of traditional strength, a tight, unshakable unit that stood behind him through every battle. But after his death, that image began to shatter in front of the world. Insiders whispered that Charlie's parents didn't buy Erika's story from the start. According to those close to them, they felt her speech sounded too polished, too scripted. Like she was trying to control the narrative instead of grieving. Some reports even claimed they cut ties completely, refusing to take her calls, refusing to shield her from the growing backlash. At the same time, other relatives were defending Erika, calling her strong, dignified, and unfairly painted as a villain. This split wasn't just about public image, it was about who really knew Charlie best, his wife of several years or the family that raised him. And when those divisions started to spill into the open, it raised an even darker question. If the people closest to him couldn't agree on what happened, how could the rest of the world ever know the truth? Neighbors also began adding fuel to the fire. They claimed Charlie and Erika's marriage wasn't as picture perfect as their Instagram feed suggested. Loud arguments, tension about money, even whispers of multi-million-dollar deals and debts that nobody outside the family knew about. To many, those stories made Erika's sudden composure look less like strength and more like someone hiding secrets. Instead of grief pulling everyone closer, Charlie's death was driving them apart. And with each rumor, each side taking, the once untouchable Kirk family image was collapsing in real time. But the story didn't end with family drama. To a growing number of people, this wasn't just about a marriage gone wrong. It was about something much bigger. Whispers began circulating about the kind of pressure Charlie was under behind the scenes. He had built a reputation as someone who never backed down, but that also made him enemies. Powerful ones. Some claimed billionaires had approached him with offers, or bribes, to soften his stance on certain hot-button issues. When Charlie refused, the tone allegedly shifted. Offers turned into threats. According to those closest to him, Charlie had even admitted he was considering backing off just to protect himself. He never got the chance. That's when the internet connected the dots. Was Tyler Robinson really acting alone? Or was he just the scapegoat, a name handed to the public to keep the real story buried? Conspiracy threads dug into the details. If the weapon was truly a .30-06, as police claimed, then why did hunters and gun experts say the sound on video didn't match? Why did it sound more like a smaller caliber? And if Tyler really fired from over 150 yards away, how did he land such a precise shot with no training? As one viral comment put it, if he's that good, let's see him do it on camera. And then there were the inconsistencies about the escape. Witnesses said the shooter was seen sprinting away with no weapon in hand. How could he have broken down a rifle, stashed it in a backpack, leapt off a building, and vanished in seconds? The math didn't add up. These cracks only deepened when people started digging into Erika's past. Allegations about her family's old business ties, suspicious connections in entertainment and politics. Even her sudden silence on social media before Charlie's death started to look like foreshadowing. Put all of this together and the tragedy stopped looking like a single man's act of violence. It began to look like something orchestrated, a power play, with Charlie as the target and his family caught in the fallout. For some, Erika was still at the center. For others, she was just another pawn in a much larger game. But one thing was clear, Charlie Kirk's death wasn't just about loss. It was about power, betrayal, and the possibility that the truth was being buried deeper every single day.
Charlie Kirk's death left behind more questions than answers. His wife's calm words, Candace Owens' raw grief, the cracks in his family, and the too neat story of a lone shooter, all of it created a storm that hasn't died down. To some, Candace Owens is the only one willing to speak the truth. To others, she crossed the line, blaming a grieving widow without proof. And caught in the middle is Erika Kirk, seen by some as the picture of strength, and by others as the face of betrayal. So what do we take away from all this? Maybe the real tragedy isn't just the moment Charlie Kirk's life ended. Maybe it's how quickly suspicion, betrayal, and conspiracy filled the void he left behind. And I'll leave you with this. Was Candace Owens exposing the truth everyone's too afraid to say? Or has this storm become nothing more than a distraction tearing apart his legacy?